Alrighty, great. So I'm gonna ask you all to just sit back and smile and look at your camera, and our admin, our director will take our photo. So please smile, ready, and smile. All right. So with that, thanks. Next, that's our photo op. Of course, in Filipinos, we like our photographs before anything else. All right. So thanks everyone, and of course, we'll get to know more of our esteemed guests later for their presentations. But before we begin our webinar, we'll have a few safety reminders. Now, first, be aware of your surroundings while the webinar is ongoing in case you need to stop due to an emergency. And second, of course, always stay safe and practice social distancing if you are out of your home. Furthermore, this webinar will be recorded and it will be available in our Livable Cities Facebook page. Questions, if you have questions, you may ask them in the Zoom Q&A chat box. This has a feature wherein you can vote on questions posted by others by simply clicking on the thumbs up icon next to the question. So some of these questions will be answered directly by our speakers or their staff in the chat box, while other questions may be parked for later to be answered at the open forum. If you're joining our webinar on Facebook Live, you may place your questions in the comments section of Facebook. Finally, at the end of the webinar, we invite all of you to please fill up our feedback survey. Your response will help us improve our Livable Cities Lab series. And you may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in this survey. So currently, we have more than 250 people in Zoom. And we thank you once again for joining us this afternoon, or spending this afternoon to learn about cities and the built environment. So before we kick off, I'd like to kick off a poll question. So the question is, and let's show it on screen, where are you all joining us from? Okay. So if you could take one of those four buttons, either Metro Manila, the rest of Luzon, Visayas, or Mindanao. And just so we know, just also so that our panelists know where our audience are, no, this afternoon. So let's see if we could please see the results of the poll. Aha. So 29% from Metro Manila, 43% from the rest of Luzon, 8% from Visayas, and 20% from Mindanao. So hello everyone, and once again, it's great to have you today in our webinar. So again, let's kick it off by introducing our first speaker. All right. Our first speaker is Manny Blas. He is the VP in the Estate Strategic Business Unit of Ayala Land Incorporated, or ALI. He was formerly the head of commercial operations at the Fort Bonifacio Development Corporation, or the FBDC, and is currently the director of FBDC, BGC Estates Association, Makati Central Estates Association, and the Bonifacio Transport Corporation. He is also the head of sustainability for Ali. To present about the making of livable communities, let us welcome Manny Blas. Hi, Sir Manny.
Hi, Sui. Thank you.
Hi.
Let me share my screen.
Okay. We can hear you really well. I see your presentation is on screen now. So on to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let me just. Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. From the poll, it looks like a lot of people are outside Manila. So I think this will be my first national talk ever. And I want to talk to you about livable communities. And we have 15 minutes for each speaker. So I'm going to ask, or I'm going to use a lot of pictures to do a lot of my communication points this afternoon. But let's begin by saying livable communities or livable cities, I define simply as places where it is nice to live. You feel safe. There are enough interesting places. You like meeting your neighbors, and you feel very comfortable and very pleasant in that place. And because of the limited time, what I'd like to do is divide this into three parts. And I define each part as in the beginning, in the middle, and towards full development. In the beginning, we'll talk about Bonifacio Global City. And here I'd like to show you the principles followed when you start with a blank page that you can act, you have a blank parcel of land and you can plan it from scratch. The second part is in the middle, which means the plan is there, it's been largely implemented, and there's certain adjustments that you will have to make in order to enhance the plan. And I would say most of the people who are listening to this talk are probably in the middle, if not at the end. And at the end is towards full development. A lot of the things are already fixed. Roads have been built, buildings have been built, and there's not much elbow room, but there are still things that we can do in order to make that place particularly still livable. And that's how I would end this talk. On the second part, in the first part, I'll talk about BGC as a case study. In the second part, Makati, the CBD, and then I'll talk about tactical urbanism in the last parts. And in any place or in any community, in any city, I think there are 5 things that you must have in order to make it livable, to make it a pleasant place. And these 5 places are, one is it's interconnected. I can go there easily. And from there, I can go to other places easily. Transportation is available. The traffic is managed well. I can move around. The second is it's pedestrian friendly. I can walk safely. I feel safe walking, and I can walk comfortably. The third is open spaces. Again, in BGC, we started from scratch, so there are enough open spaces. But I'll show you how you can have open spaces even though you're in the middle and you're at the end. And that's simply, I can go somewhere where I can relax. The third is any livable place, I believe, has a complete mix of uses, or there's a mixed use in that place. It's not just everybody lives in one place and everybody shops in another place, but it's more of everybody lives and shops all in the same place, and I can walk to wherever I need to go. And then finally, sustainability. I think you have a feeling that my neighbors take care of the environment. And all of these 5 elements are usually present in different degrees in a livable city. And the more you have it, obviously, the more livable and the more pleasant it is. And I'll just mention that, our topic is also about resiliency and about sustainability. And I just want to make the point that usually livable communities are usually more sustainable because you're able to organize and practice eco-efficiency. You encourage people to walk and bike. And a lot of us, I believe, we bought our home maybe 20, 30 years ago. We preferred the suburbs. And once you live in a suburb, you have to take a car to go to the supermarket. Whereas if you live in a dense urban place, then that supermarket or that grocery store is probably walking distance from where you live. So, you take the elevator instead of taking the car to go down and then walk to that supermarket. If you're able to manage traffic better, then, less gas and less time spent on the road. And usually, a livable community, you have some sort of disaster relief action in place. So if there's a typhoon, people get together and they help one another. And usually they help also the communities around them. And you have enough open spaces which serve as rescue points. That's where you meet. If, let's say, there was an earthquake and the family was all over the city, you have a meeting place where you say, okay, we meet here in this park. Right? So let me start by talking about in the beginning, you can make a master plan, and this is what BGC had. It was formerly a military base, and master planners came in and did what it did. Now that you see it, so I'll take you one by one to these elements that you will see on the left. That it's interconnected. I won't talk about this map, but you can just see, uh, you can go there via EDSA, via C5, via Forbes Park, via Makati. There's now a bridge that connects the Ortiga Center or Pasig, that crosses the Pasig River and lands inside BGC, so it's also connected in the north. Okay. Uh, this one is more, I think, more to what the topic is all about, is how you make it pedestrian friendly. Um, and one of the things that you really want to do is people can cross the streets safely. You put up signs. You have clearly marked pedestrian lanes, and I tell you, there's a big difference between those lanes being clearly painted and if you just paint it and it looks like it's painted with paint that's already fading. There's a big impact. In BGC, in the lower left, during the pandemic, we set aside one lane and it became a combined bus lane and bike lane. And we get about 3 to 5,000 people using that bike lane every day. So it's become popular. The lower right picture you can see here, this is one of the notorious bump that you will see in BGC. And if you hate this bump and you think it's a stupid idea, I plead guilty to this because we deliberately made this extra higher than the usual bump, and we did get a lot of complaints. But this bump forces you to stop and really give way to the pedestrians who are crossing. And this one is right on that street that crosses to the Mine Museum. So you have a lot of children crossing here. And because of the height of that bump, you have to really stop, pause, and let the pedestrian park. And I bring this up because this was a difficult choice for us, because it was a choice between, do you prioritize the car or do you prioritize pedestrians? And we said, okay, let's get the flack, but let's prioritize the pedestrians. This is the third point, open spaces. Again, because we were able to start from scratch, you can see from your map on the right, that there are series of parks all over the city and they're permanent open spaces. But not everybody can do that. But here we said, okay, all of these spaces are going to be open spaces permanently. It's not going to be built upon. And to me, the measure of an open space is not when it's open, it's when it's occupied by a lot of people. So you put all sorts of things there in order to attract people to go, like sculptures or playgrounds. That's Filipino games, Pico and Tumbang Preso, that you can see there that people use in order to to just occupy the place. Complete mix of uses. There's a supermarket, there's a drugstore, but I wanted to bring up that painting that you see in the middle. There's a lot of new buildings in BGC, and in many cases the buildings are not across another building, and therefore you see all of this blank wall. And we told the team, look, don't leave any blank wall blank. Just put any artwork there to just make the place more interesting, and you see this all over the place. And again, sustainability. There are measures that you do in order to lower your carbon footprint. Even the use of the pedestrian lanes and bike lanes lower the carbon footprint, because you make it more pleasant for people to walk rather than take a car if they were going, let's say, from one place of BGC to Market, for example. But I did want to tell you what this on the lower left. This is Burgos Circle from the top. And Burgos Circle is in the lowest part of BGC. And underneath Burgos Circle is a detention tank equivalent to 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And the purpose of that is so that when there is a heavy rain, all of the rainwater is collected in this detention tank first, and then spewed out to the creeks nearby, so that not all of this water go to our neighbors. They are temporarily detained, so that then they are discharged in a measured rate so that they don't flood, the neighboring community. So this is one, and I should say, I mean, I understand there are many mayors in the city. This cost us 30 million pesos when it was originally built, and you would say that's a lot of money. It's 30 million pesos. But if you just imagine the damages that floods cause, I mean, it pays back in a very short period of time. And during Ondoy, uh, Burgos Circle is where you had, the deepest part of BGC, and by the deepest part, it was just about ankle high. When, the rest of Manila was being flooded, this really helped us. Okay, let me now go to, let's look at the place like Makati, wherein, it's fairly built, and yet there are things that you want to improve on. How do you manage it? So uh, again, this is where we will, apply these 5 principles. And in Makati, we wanted to make it pedestrian friendly, but sometime in the 1990s, when vehicular traffic really started to become heavy, we started to build, sometime 1995 to 1996, we built these overpasses. And not too many people know, but there's an overpass connection that will bring you from Glorieta all the way to Makati Medical Center. That's about 1.4 kilometers. That's connected along De La Rosa Street, if you're familiar with Makati. It's connected along the buildings at the back. And in fact, in some of those buildings, you can go directly inside the building from this overpass, but it's weather protected, whether it's raining or shining, you can go anywhere from Glorieta to Makati Medical Center. And again, because of vehicular traffic, it was fairly complicated for people to cross the street. So we built these underpasses so that people can cross the street without interfering with traffic. And there are 8 underpasses along Ayala Avenue. But these are adjustments that were not in the original plan, but had to be made in the middle of the plan in order to address the issues happening at the time. Here's another thing I wanted to show you briefly. You see how this intersection is fairly wide? If you go there now, this is De La Rosa and Esteban. What we did was to close the intersections. I'll show you this picture. You see, you close the gap of the intersection. So I'll show you before, and I'll show you the same intersection after. I mean, this is the drawing, but this is how it would look like now. So you bring the intersection closer together. What happens? You make the pedestrian crossing shorter, and you put more sidewalks where people can gather. We put some benches on these intersections in order to make it, a gathering place or a smoking place or a snack place for the pedestrians. Again, making it pedestrian friendly. We did a study. I've got maybe 6 more minutes. Let me just wrap this up quickly. And we said covered walkways were our problem. I said 37% said covered walkways. We had enough sidewalks, but not enough covered sidewalks. So what we did was to put the sidewalks that you see there, and look at how the sidewalks kind of wrap around the tree, so you don't have to cut the tree. But these are things that really help the pedestrians, especially during rainy season. There's an arrow that I point there towards the sidewalk here, because I want you to notice that these are flat sidewalks, because that matters a lot. I mean, you might have a sidewalk that's baku-baku, but flat sidewalks really make that walk very pleasant. Okay, I'll be skipping some of these, but this is what I wanted to. This is along Ayala Avenue, and before the pandemic, this is how you would get inside the bus. I mean, it was like every person for himself. And if you're a pregnant woman, too bad, you just have to fight it out. And so we wanted to solve this problem, and all it took was a little signages, bollards, And people, you should read the Facebook pages, Facebook posts that we got, thanking, people that we finally did the queue, and it was well organized, and all it took are bollards and signs, and everybody's life became a lot more pleasant, and it became, a much better experience than trying to fight it out riding a bus. It didn't take much, is my message. Okay, here's another example. This is Rada Streets. This is under mixed use because, we always think streets are for cars. No, they're not. I mean, you and I, for those of you who were born maybe 30 or 40 years ago, we played on the streets. The streets were for cars and people, but somewhere along the way, streets just became just for cars. And we were limited to sidewalks. But we wanted to say, no, it can still be for both. So you now have the Rada Promenade in the same street that you see on the left. It's now like this. If you go there now, you won't see this because we had a temporary permit problem with local government in order to make this a permanent feature. But, we had this for a few weeks, about 2 months, we were like this in Rada. Okay, this is towards full development, what I call tactical urbanism. Some of the things that we can do in our cities today in order to make it more livable. And I define tactical urbanism as simply, it's a tactical approach to solving urban problems. It's tactical, it's not strategic. It's a one at a time, not a whole system, because a whole system takes time and it becomes more complicated. You plan by doing. In other words, you try it out, experiment on it, and you become very flexible. If it doesn't work, you just take it out. That's part of why it's called tactical. And usually you start with what are the major pain points in my community, and then what are the tactical solutions to that. No? So let me show you some examples. So like I would think in many cities, especially the busy ones, one pain point is having an organized bus and jeepney stops. Okay, and do you notice this? Can you, if I can point out, you see these are uniformed marshals here, okay, in order to keep people towards the left side so they don't cross it. And I guess the marshals wanted to do this to keep people safe. But it just crossed my mind. What if the marshals organize them into queues, into lines, instead of just keeping them all in one side of the road? And we like queues. It's not like sometimes you say Filipinos don't know how to queue. No, we know how to queue. Somebody just has to prompt us. And this is an example. Okay, I forgot which train station this is, but this is Philippine situation. And again, I remind you of what we did. It was just signages. Signs have a way of making things look official, and people just follow them. Especially if you make them look nice and firm and bold, people follow it and they form lines. Another pain point is a safe way to cross. Okay, like you see here. Again, let's see who survives this patintero, we would call it, no? But you can make these pedestrian lanes more creative. This is an example I saw in Bohol, in the municipality of Loon. This is actually paint. I mean, you think it's uplifted, but it's paint because it's drawn in a particular way. And who says pedestrian lanes have to be black and white? I mean, this is in Panay, they made it rainbow colors. And it attracted more attention, both for the vehicles and for the people who wanted to cross the street. It worked both ways. Okay, another pain point is some places do not look nice. And this one, I like this place because it's neat, it's very clean. But it could look better because you have this graffiti of the wall on the right. And I wanted to say, the power of Filipino murals. I mean, these are things that I tried to cite them where I saw them about people can make how a mural can make a big difference. And in BGC, we just put murals everywhere, and I don't think you can overdo murals. Here are some more examples. And I wanted to show this to you because this is by Nini Andrada, Sacro. What she does is she puts the outline And then the people who are, some of them are just crossing the street. I mean, these are not volunteers. They're just like walking along the sidewalk. They spend 10, 15 minutes. They pick up paint and then they color green the boundaries. It's like you're coloring a coloring book. Okay? But, you know, it's a community building thing as well. If you want to go 3D, check out this, the Bookstop project. Contact them in Facebook. They install this for free. It's like steps, but underneath it are books. And the concept is, if you want to borrow a book, just put another book. It's a perpetual exchange. Here's another look at it. And you know, I mean, at night, I mean, this looks even better at night. So again, ideas that you can pick up. Uh, Pain point, lack of places to gather. My suggestion, you know, look at the power of paint. You know, when you look at the street and you say, well, I'm going to paint this and I'm going to mark it for common use, people respect that paint. Let me show you the next picture. Okay, you see, this is a sidewalk, which I think people were, vehicles were probably parking here. And when they put this paint, can you see this thing where I have the arrow? Suddenly the tricycles don't go and park in the sidewalks anymore. You know, they stay just at the boundaries. And I think this is the power of paint I'm referring to. Here's another example. This used to be a parking lot. They put bollards on the side and then they put paint and now it became like a gathering place. And I think you can have programs here, and you know, if you want some programs or maybe rallies or whatever, you can use it in this space and people just respect it once you paint it. Okay, here's another example, you know, kind of overdone, but you know, you put lights, you put paint on the street. It's a way of reclaiming the street. You know, again, as I said before, you know, we think streets are only for cars, but street can be for cars and people. And that's what I have for you this afternoon. You know, 3 stages where you can do things to make it more livable. You just follow these 5 principles. And the 2 books that I recommend for people who might want to know more about this. I've given this to some city mayors that I've dealt with, and they appreciate it, you know, very much. One is The Triumph of City by Edward Glaser, and then the other one is Tactical Urbanism for those of you who want to learn more about it. Thank you very much. Sorry to go over time there.
Thanks, Armani. And thanks for the really good live examples that you presented at BGC in Makati. Um, and also for taking us through a tour of a nice place to live and to work, by the way. And I saw that you even used the corner of where I used to work, no, in Makati. So it's good to see that. Yeah, great examples, really good examples. Thanks. We'll speak more to Manny later. Let's go on to our next presenter, and he is Angelo Tan. Angelo is the country lead for the Philippines in climate business for the International Finance Corporation, the IFC. He has a decade of real estate experience in mixed use development management, commercial real estate transactions, and architecture business development. He is an industrial engineer by profession, and he finished his Master's of Sustainable Built Environment at UNSW Sydney under an Australia Awards scholarship. To speak to us about standards for building resilience and sustainability, let's welcome Angelo. Hello, Angelo. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Sui. Thank you so much for
Hi.
having me. I did prepare some
Thank you.
slides for this, so give me just a moment while I load up my slides.
Okay, we can hear you well, and your slides are on screen now. So please go ahead.
All right, so let me just go on full screen. So I think that it's great that I followed Sir Manny's presentation because while his presentation focused on sustainability and resilience at the community level, my presentation now will focus on what we can do at the building level to make our buildings safer, more resilient, and greener as well, and what standards we can use to get there. Okay, now a lot of you may be wondering why the International Finance Corporation does green and resilient buildings. Now, for those of you who don't know, the International Finance Corporation is one of the five member organizations of the World Bank Group. So when you say World Bank, that's really IBRD and IDA on the left, depending on the country. But when you say IFC or International Finance Corporation, we are the private sector arm. But as part of the World Bank Group, we share in the broader mission of eradicating extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity in developing countries. Now, within IFC is a division called Climate Business Department, where I'm from, and our mission is to find ways to channel investments into more climate smart investments. So when we work with real estate developers, that's where we try to work with on the building side, for example, to make them more green and more resilient. So that's part of our mission to support our goals of climate action as well. Now, I present to you today against amidst the backdrop of a recent IPCC report released maybe I think a couple of weeks ago, where we discovered that that there's a dire warning that risks are increasing with global warming, and also that climate impacts are felt disproportionately in urban areas with the most economically and socially marginalized. So the problem with this is that the people who contribute the least to climate change are actually the ones who suffer the most from its effects. Now, did you know that the Philippines is actually a low emitting country in terms of pollutions, but we're actually one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change? Now, our country is confronted by the dual challenge of climate change mitigation and also climate change adaptation. At this point, even though our country is considered a low emitting country, I think that at this point we can choose to be part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. But in whatever approach that we use towards making our cities more livable, resilient, and green, we need to ensure that our approaches are quantitative. And we don't just rely on qualitative descriptions of what is green and what is resilient. We need to set and achieve targets that are quantitative in nature. And we should aspire to reach these goals. At the same time, we also need to ensure that our approaches are inclusive, that we are leaving no one behind in our path onto a low carbon path. And also, we need to collaborate as much as we can across a wide range of stakeholders. We believe that climate change will be won or lost in Asia, and in particular in Southeast Asia. And that climate change is a race that no one will win until everyone crosses the finish line. So we should leave no one behind, and that's at the center of our mission. And speaking of collaboration, we have a four-part strategy to scale up green and resilient buildings in developing countries. So if you look at the upper left, the yellow portion talks about how we work with financial institutions and banks through our investment and advisory offers towards the creation of finance products that would incentivize green and resilient building design and construction. The orange portion on the upper right talks about how we can invest directly and provide advisory to real estate developers and building owners to enable them to create more green and resilient buildings. The green portion on the lower right talks about how we work closely in terms of codes and incentives. So I think that this is something that's very relevant to our audience today. This is where we collaborate both at the national and at the local government level to create policies and an enabling environment for green and resilient building design and construction. And then finally, we have our standards, which are EDGE for green buildings and Building Resilience Index for resilient buildings, which make it more accessible, inclusive, and affordable to make these kinds of buildings. So in the succeeding slides, I'll give you an overview of each of these tools. So EDGE and also BRI. I'll talk to you about how we can work with you as governments. And also, I'll show you a very interesting example of an affordable housing project that's making a lot of that's meeting a lot of targets in terms of green and resilient building design and construction. Now, governments can adopt a wide range of different incentives, some of which are actually cost free. To stimulate the growth of green and resilient buildings in your own jurisdictions. Now, what we want to emphasize here that it doesn't have to be a financial incentive. There are ways that we can encourage green and resilient buildings that won't affect the revenue that goes into our local government. So, for example, it can be through an additional floor area, additional FAR, or additional height limit for our buildings that will not only encourage developers to build in our jurisdictions, but also to increase investment and revenue for the local government. Now, at IFC, we do have a government toolkit, and we can work closely with you to enable you to create that enabling environment for green and resilient buildings. So, after this presentation, I'll leave my contact details, and then maybe after that, we can engage on a one on one discussion to see what are the gaps, what are the opportunities, so that we can collaborate closely with you. And we've done a lot in this space. So you can see here some examples of what we've done in other developing countries in Asia, in Latin America and Caribbean, as well as in Africa. Um, a couple of very interesting case studies in the Philippines are what we've done through the Philippine Green Building Code, which we helped the DPWH to develop, as well as the Mandaluyong Green Building Ordinance, which we also enabled the Mandaluyong city government to implement. So, if this is something that resonates with you, if this is something that sounds like you want to implement for your local government, please reach out to me so I can help you. Now, I'm going to discuss EDGE Green Building Certification first. So, I think that some of you may already be familiar with other green building rating systems, but I think that the key difference between EDGE and other green building rating systems is that we have a free software. And it's not really a software, it's actually a website. It's an online platform that allows developers, building owners, and local governments to identify the most cost effective measures to build green. Often, and this is one of the problems that stop us from scaling up green buildings. People think that when you say green buildings, they are expensive and they are complex. But I'm here to tell you that through the Edge app, it will actually show you that green buildings don't have to be expensive. You don't have to resort to expensive technological solutions to reach the green building standards. And again, it's free to use, making it very accessible to a very large portion of the population. The second component is that it's a simplified and achievable green building standard. So, where other green building rating systems have 8 or maybe 10 impact categories, we only focus on energy, water, and materials because these are the most resource intensive components of building design and construction. So, for a project to meet the EDGE standard, which is an achievable standard, internationally accepted standard, they have to demonstrate at least 20% efficiency on energy, water, and materials. And then that way they can qualify for EDGE. Now, again, um, people don't need to do that comparison manually. We have the app that can do that comparison for them. And then finally, the third component is the verified green label. Because it's a green building certification system, we do award a certificate, which is a testament to the sustainability of the building. And when I talk about building, I'm not just referring to privately developed buildings. It can also be government buildings, and we are collaborating with some government units already on applying EDGE for these types of buildings. Now, if you're interested, I can arrange a one-on-one demo for the city government. But this is just a screenshot of what Edge looks like. So it's as simple as putting in the basic design details about the project, and automatically the app will tell you how your project performs in terms of energy efficiency, water efficiency, and materials efficiency. So you can see here on the left almost a menu of options that will allow you a lot of flexibility on what measures you can implement, whatever works for the budget of the project. And then at the very top, what's very interesting is that it can also immediately report on the quantitative impact. So it can tell you what's the final energy use, what's the final water use for the building, what's the operational carbon dioxide savings, embodied energy savings. And then later on, it can also even tell you what's the payback period, how much the sustainability measures would cost, and what are the utility savings. and even the number of people impacted by the sustainability measures. So that if your local government, for example, or even a corporate who's in the audience today would like to use this and you want to do your integrated or sustainability reporting, you have a third party validated quantitative impacts that you can include for your reports so that your stakeholders can appreciate them. Now, Edge is growing in the Philippines. So far, we've certified 50 projects all over the country, of which more than half were certified in 2021 alone, which just goes to show that green building adoption is really accelerating very fast in the Philippines. And something that I'm also very proud of is that these projects include 6,400 homes, more than 90% of which are actually affordable housing units. Later on, I'll show you a case study of one of these projects. And what this really tells us is that if an affordable housing developer can meet these green building standards, then definitely any kind of building can as well. We also have more than 3.7 million square meters currently in registration and pursuing certification. And these are just some of the efficiency metrics. You have 46,000 megawatt hour per year in energy that's being saved through Edge, more than 15 million cubic meters per year in water, 4.4 million gigajoules in embodied energy, and 22,000 tons of carbon dioxide on an annual basis in emissions. And again, it's very easy to extract these quantitative metrics because of the Edge app. Uh, we also say that anything that has four walls and the roof can be certified with Edge. So whatever that building is, if you think that your building can benefit from being operating more efficiently and also doing better for the environment, then we can use Edge for that kind of project. Now, going to the second component, Building Resilience Index. So the reason why we created Building Resilience Index is that, previously we were just working on the green building side, but our clients started asking us, if you're doing something about green buildings and climate change mitigation, what are we doing for Building Resilience Index, for building resilience and climate change adaptation? And this is a very real concern for the Philippines because for the Philippines, it's not just about mitigation. Climate change is here. We're seeing Odette and various types of disasters. And we know that no matter how sustainable we design our buildings, if they cannot withstand a fire or earthquake or volcanic eruption or a flood, then all of our efforts in making our buildings more sustainable will go to waste. So that's why we developed Building Resilience Index. So there are three components to Building Resilience Index that make it quite unique. It's the first tool of its kind in the world, and it's currently being piloted in the Philippines because, as I mentioned earlier, the Philippines is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. Now, the first component is the identification of risk. Some of you may be familiar with Hazard Hunter, which was developed by FIVOX DOST. So we do have a lot of tools that help with, but we go beyond hazard mapping. The next step after you identify the natural hazards applicable for a project, depending on its location, is to identify ways to mitigate against those hazards. So that's the management of risk component, where we look for opportunities to improve the resilience of the building in the way that it was designed and constructed. And then finally, the third component is the disclosure of risk, which increases transparency and you can think of this as a rating system for the resilience of a building. So the hope here is to provide a common language that various stakeholders can understand and use to assess the resilience of a particular building. So just going through each of these components one by one, identification of risk is a hazard mapping. So again, depending on the location of the project, it will tell you what are the applicable hazards. And we're looking at four hazard categories. We have wind, so that includes downbursts, tornadoes, storms, hurricanes, and typhoons. We're looking at water hazards, various types of flooding, storm surges, and tsunamis. We're looking at fire hazards, which include local fire and wildfire, and also geoseismic hazards, such as volcanic eruptions, landslides, and earthquakes. And we're not only looking at the physical integrity of the building, meaning the way that it was designed and constructed, but also the operational continuity of the buildings as well. So these are just some of the screenshots. So for management of risk, it will show you what mitigating measures you can implement to improve resilience for the four hazard categories. And this is what the letter grade system looks like. So the vision is that each building in the Philippines will be rated from a scale of R to A plus. And ultimately, the vision is to get all of the buildings in the Philippines to an A or an even A plus rating. And again, we hope that this can help make more informed decisions about real estate design, construction, and even investment, or even where the ordinary Filipino family will choose to buy their next home. This is an example of a report that the app will publish. And these are just some of the developers who are already using Building Resilience Index. We launched the Building Resilience Commitment campaign in fourth quarter of 2021. So it's sort of a resilience pledge where we received a pledge of more than 1.86 million square meters of space to be built or retrofitted to become more resilient to natural hazards. Now, before I wrap up, I just wanted to highlight this case study. So Imperial Homes Corporation, so we have Aldrin, who's joining us during the Q&A panel. So this is one of the projects that have achieved a high level of sustainability. They're EDGE Advanced certified, and they also have a very high level of resilience through their Conovate technology through Building Resilience Index. So they have certified most of their projects, and for Building Resilience Index, they're doing their assessment right now, and that will be third-party validated as well. And later on, maybe we can go through some of the measures that we implement to reach these levels of sustainability and resilience. So I'm going to stop there. These are just some of our donors for EDGE and Building Resilience Index. But again, I want to encourage our local governments to reach out to me so that we can engage in a one-on-one discussion and see how we can maybe implement something like this in your development permit process or in whatever process you have at the local government level. So thank you so much. Back to you, Zoe.
Thank you, Angelo. And I think you already have some interest in the Q&A to connect about Edge and also the different services that you just mentioned. Very, very impressive. It's great to know that there is such an app and there is such measures and rating schemes. So that really helps project makers and also, I suppose, consumers, no, who will be partaking of this new development. So thank you. We'll learn more about Angelo and the programs of the IFC a little later on. So, by the way, we have about 340 people, almost 350 people a little earlier on Zoom. So again, thanks everyone for joining us in our webinar. Let me check next. Okay, our next speaker, we have Raymond Aguilar. So Raymond has been with Globe since 1997 and is currently the head of corporate property management under the finance and admin since 2019. He leads the division handling corporate building management operations and infra facilities projects such as corporate office builds and data centers. Prior to his post, he was the former head of operational risk and business protection covering safety, emergency, safety and emergency, disaster management, and business continuity. To speak to us today on integrating tech in buildings and infrastructure, let us welcome Raymond Aguilar. Hello, Raymond.
Hello, Zui. Hello, and good afternoon to everyone. Can you hear me all right? Is my audio
Thank
okay?
you. Yeah, I can hear you, and I see you have the slide on screen now, so please go ahead.
Yep. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. You know, it's nice to follow someone talking about BGC and next someone talking about how to further enhance sustainability measures because what I am about to share is how Globe attempted or at least did their own integration of sustainability in our building operations. And maybe before I go deeper into that, I'll give you a bit of more information on who we are as Globe, just in case you guys don't know who Globe is and how we operate as a company. So a lot of people know Globe as a telco, as a telecommunications company. But today, Globe is more than a telco. We are a digital solutions platform with business interests not only in telco, but in health, fintech, entertainment, manpower, IT, and digital advertising. We have over 86 million customers in a distribution chain of over 1.1 million. Our sustainability is anchored on one purpose, and that's in this statement, in everything we do, we treat people right to create a globe of good. Um, at one point, I really didn't mind whether or not it had to be stated in that way. But it helps a lot that something as big as sustainability can be articulated um, in a very simple statement so as to push your intentional objectives. So we are guided simply by three sustainable principles. The first is to operate responsibly by aligning our ESG practices. And this is through making sure that we understand the UN Sustainability Development Goals and the UN Global Impact. Second is that we create a positive environmental and societal impact by addressing our ESG material issues. That's understanding what our focus areas are. And really, that's the three ESG focus areas that Globe has identified is the digital nation, care for the people, and care for the environment. Three major objectives that Globe is really much a part of as we essentially try to move people's digital lifestyle. And third, we advocate ESG adoption. By delivering on our sustainability commitments and engaging our stakeholders, then we can disclose responsibly our global sustainability reporting standards. If we are going to look at Globe's journey, let me just, when we started, I think we have to go back to 2012 when we started to measure and align our greenhouse gas accounting and reporting with the GHG protocol. It was around that time that we were about to build, or we started constructing our headquarters, the Globe Tower. And that incidentally is located in BGC, which we saw earlier, presented by Mr. Manny Blas. Now, when we built the Globe Tower, I think the right statement would be it became intentional. It's intentional that we should have a basis of how we will build this, not just any building that we will occupy, or not just any building that we need for our center of operations or our headquarters. We decided we will design it or craft it with the LEED framework for green building design and operations. LEED is as you know, short for lead in energy and environmental design. By 2016, we were able to achieve LEED Gold certification. In 2019, we committed to the Race to Zero as part of the GSMA Climate Action. And last year, we committed to support the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures.
National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is scheduled participation as concluded.
Okay, so now let's proceed to the Globe Tower. I have to apologize because we have an announcement for the national disaster drill for the next couple of days. So you can probably hear that in the PA system. Now let's talk about the Globe Tower. We started construction in 2011, and we started operations in 2013. So the features of the Globe Tower, as I mentioned, trying to be intentional in the design. We had to cater to 4,200 office workstations, floors of conference rooms, making sure that we have covered parking, a 500-seat capacity dining hall, 3 outdoor gardens, and a rooftop helipad. Understanding how we will operate this building, changing slide. Okay. We had to look at different ways of making sure we can implement best practices on sustainability. Number one is that at present, the Globe Tower now runs on 100% renewable energy, and I'll discuss how we did that. We have energy efficient features like 360-degree windows, variable speed controllers, motion sensors, LED lights, cold air recovery, however which way we can at least ensure that we are using energy more efficiently and we can minimize waste. We have a water recycling system. We do have waste minimization programs. e-waste zero drop-off bins, and we do have stakeholder management to ensure the sustainability of such practices. So here, showing the different energy efficient features and how we are running on 100% renewable energy. What we did was leverage the power purchase agreement with renewable energy suppliers since 2019. So what we did was we leveraged the retail energy power contracts that we partner with in terms of our power supply, and included sustainability in the vendor evaluation criteria. This would mean those we partner with to supply our building with power should have at least technical compliance on their power plant portfolio on renewable energy, and how they can offer to supply the company, and the capability to issue internationally recognized verified emission reduction certification. This would mean that we will drive and promote that future partners and power plant generators will invest further in making sure they have more renewable energy supply and capacity, and hence scale up or have the capacity for renewable energy in the market grow. For energy efficiency, we have a number of solutions, which I mentioned earlier. Cold air recovery, the use of cold restroom exhaust air to cool down, and variable speed controllers, and that is how we can have intelligent demand-driven motor controllers to power our cooling. As you know, a lot of the demand for electricity is related to cooling for any large building. We have a 360-degree window design. Hence, we harness daylight, helping eliminate the workplace. In this photo, you will see that although we do have some lighting fixtures on, there are some lighting fixtures that are shut down because we may not need the all lights on for illumination of the open office workplace. We have motion sensors limiting the use of lighting in restrooms. And we have, of course, LED lights throughout the building to make sure that we are consuming less energy in our lighting needs. For rainwater collection and water recycling system, we actually have a gray water system. It starts off the process with the water collection. Rainwater and aircon moisture are collected and stored in a gray water collection tank. This is treated to a two-step water treatment process, activated carbon and depth filtration, and then UV lamp. And then we recycle this water, treated water that can be used in various building day-to-day. For example, garden watering, water closet and urinal flushing, housekeeping activities. Hence, we can reduce our demand for commercial water being supplied to our operations. Apart from the features of the building, we have processes or activities within the operations of our HQ that relate to specifically waste management. We promote responsible waste management, and we have programs to divert waste from the landfill. One of these programs is e-waste recycling, where we deploy e-waste zero collection bins across our office floors to engage employees to be responsible in e-waste disposal and recycling. Plastic waste management, we actually installed our own plastic shredder for processing of clean and dry plastics. And we have eco-friendly vending machines, cashless vending machines installed across office floors where you can use your own mug or your cup. We don't have to use your standard paper cup for your coffee. I mean, it's not it's not a big scale implementation, but having this run in your operations, in your building, actually engages your employees to be more sustainable even in their day-to-day. For stakeholder management and how we go beyond, I mean, when I was first asked to talk about sustainability in operations, and in this sense, the best example would be our building, the Globe Tower in BGC. My first reaction was, but that's an old story. We did that back in 2011, 2012. And then I thought about, isn't the mark of a true sustainable practice something that you can talk about years after? And I realized almost 10 years after, we are still looking at how we can further improve what are the practices we have in our operations. So we do maintain IMS certified operations, ISO 14001, ISO 45001, ISO 22301, and that's for environment, occupational health and safety, and BCM respectively. We just, in the past couple of years, we just installed, actually just last year, we just installed the Intelligent Work Environment Monitoring System, which it's just this little box you put on a workstation, which shows you regular and real-time work environment measurement. And that's office temperature, humidity, air pressure, dust particles, CO and CO, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, lighting, illumination, sound level, virus index, all of those things that you need to know and see how you can address whether or not you can improve your current operations on these different work environment parameters and what other solutions you can present in your day-to-day operations. All other implementation inside our TGT in the Globe Tower we do have a paperless office, and we are a firm believer in automation, in making sure that we are not high on documentation. We have a retention policy on paper. We have a program we called WhatsApp and BYO. We launched WhatsApp is Wag sa Single-Use Plastic. So it was an initial pain point, but we had to tell our food merchants to no longer bring bottled plastic in our dining hall. And then bring your own utensils, making sure that we can lessen the use of single-use plastic in the building. And of course, being responsible, always implementing or telling our employees to clean as you go, whether it's in the dining hall, in your workstations, in your meeting rooms. We do have, and as sustainability is not just the environment and progressing to operations or how employees are, we do have overall wellness activities in the building, physical activity facilities, and access to mental health services. We do have a gym, and I believe we still add additional bikes or treadmills when we can, if there is demand. I guess my last two slides would just be showing some of the ratings that we've had or some certifications that validate that I guess we are on the right track in terms of making sure we are driving our sustainability goals or targets. We are far from where we want to be. We know that we can do more, and just showing you how we've integrated sustainability in the Globe Tower is enough to at least share how we can all maybe do our little thing in our different operations, in our different areas, in your different communities, and see how you can help out in terms of your role in sustainability. I guess I'll part with the statement that when Globe started this, it was really just about how you can be intentional. How can we be intentional in terms of how we want to target sustainability and how we can contribute to that. These are our channels. If you have any questions, you can just icon Globe Bridging Communities. I didn't show my Instagram here, Facebook account, so so I'll just leave that to our corporate communications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond. Really very impressive examples that you presented there. And also, as you said, no, it really is a measure of intent. And impressive also yung mga ESG ratings that you showed. No? I mean, all of that is a function or is a result of all of the small things and all of the big things as well, no? Resulting in the overall sustainability achievement of Globe. So great stuff. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you later at the Q&A. And I bet there are more questions from the audience, especially how you get all of these things done, no, in a corporate environment. Is it surely lots of things to copy there, no? Especially WhatsApp. Wag sa single-use plastics. So, very good. So okay, very well. So next presentation we have Tom Woodward. Tom leads Real's climate smart, affordable housing portfolio with a specific interest on low carbon built environment solutions. Tom is a certified EDGE expert and qualified architect with a passion for driving sustainable social impact through enterprise within the built environment. With over 10 years of experience in project management, uh, design and construction, Tom has experience of delivering projects at a range of scales, both in the UK and internationally. So to present about affordable climate resilient houses, let's all welcome Tom. Hi, Tom. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. So
Thanks, Tom.
today,
We can hear you well, but could you? Okay, there you go. We can see your slide now. Okay, go ahead.
brilliant. So thanks very much for having me, everyone, today. It's been fascinating to hear all of the talks that have happened so far, and we're really looking forward to adding to that. Similarly to Angelo, in the sense that we'll be talking through some of our building projects and how those relate to transforming a city, both in terms of being climate smart and being resilient. So to very briefly introduce Real, we're an innovator and investor in affordable housing, and we aim for that housing to be climate smart to improve the life chances of 100 million people in urban Africa and Asia by 2030. And we do so by investing in specific projects with our partners around the world, including in the Philippines. And today I'm going to share with you some of the takeaways and lessons that we've learned from some of those projects. And to do so, I really have three key messages that I'll explain in detail through some case studies. The first, which I promised that Angelo and I did not coordinate before, but that building climate smart does not have to be complicated and it does not have to be expensive. The second, that when we pursue system change, when we try and transition to a net zero economy, we must not let perfect be the enemy of good. And the third, that the concepts of zero carbon and resilient homes are not mutually exclusive. It's too common for us to see action in one area and perceived inaction in another, but actually we can achieve both with smart and innovative solutions. But before I go into some of those case studies, I'm going to set the scene in a way that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But we view affordable housing as a key route to addressing the climate crisis, both from the perspective of demonstrating a path to net zero and also in strengthening resilience. And that is related to the state of the environment that we're in. So 39% of greenhouse gas emissions around that come from the built environment. We also know that 70% of buildings that will exist in Africa and Asia by 2050 are yet to be built. And yet 77% of population growth by 2050 would occur in Africa and Asia, which, including the Philippines, contains some of the most vulnerable regions to the effects of climate change around the world. And really, we know that in addressing the two simultaneous problems of the 1.6 billion people that live in inadequate housing today and addressing the climate crisis, that we cannot afford to address one problem and make another one worse. And that's really where our focus is. As I mentioned, we do so through a twin strategy. So the first is that we build via our partners to demonstrate that climate smart affordable housing is viable for the bottom 40% of the income pyramid in the countries in which we work. And then we take the lessons of those projects into forums just like this and explain how we can make strategic market interventions that lead to wider scale change. Our impact in numbers from that, we've been operating for over 30 years and have strengthened the resilience of over 3.5 million people as a result, including almost 750,000 empowered to improve, develop or own their own home, almost 1.3 million people gaining security from threat of eviction, almost 500,000 people benefiting from improved water provision, and over 1.1 million people benefiting from improved sanitation. And in investment terms, that looks like 167 total projects, averaging only $12,000 per home, with $72 million invested during that time. And again, with no coordination from Angelo, but appreciation that I don't have to explain EDGE in detail. We use EDGE to certify our projects and are actually looking at building resilience index as and when that scales more widely. In doing so, we've trained over 40 of our own staff and across our partner network in using the EDGE tool. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've approved over 1,000 units at our investment committee that will meet the EDGE standard as a minimum, and many are going much further. And we estimate that in doing so, we'll avoid around 18,000 tons of CO2 released in the construction and operation of the buildings that we operate. But that's enough on us. I'm going to take you back to those messages. And the first being building climate smart does not have to be complicated nor expensive. And to illustrate this point, I'm going to share with you one of our projects delivered by our partner in Pakistan called Modulus Tech. And they have developed a flat pack modular system for building houses, which according to the pre-audit edge figures results in 95% reduced energy consumption, 48% reduced water consumption, and 57% lower embodied energy in materials. And you can see here in this second image that these homes have been designed to be very comfortable, beautiful, and highly inhabitable. But some of the measures that they've used to be climate smart are not complicated or expensive. And you can see in the center of that image, there's a courtyard. And on top of that courtyard is something called a wind catcher, which draws air through the building and creates cooler temperatures. And when you combine that with the insulation and the reflectivity that the building is incorporated, it can result in up to 20 degrees reduction in peak internal temperature without air conditioning, just from the three flows of air and keeping the hot air of Pakistan outside. At the same time, it's 90% quicker than standard conventional build construction. And the production costs for one of the 2-bed units is as low as $8,000, with a plan to reduce that further over time, which then when combined with land and production services, then tends to look at about $15,000, $16,000 sales price at the moment. So really the message here is that it is possible to do these things affordably, and it's necessary because we know that the majority of the housing demand, and I saw some questions in the chat that relate to this, is for a segment of the income pyramid who cannot afford expensive homes. And even that $8,000 home, $8,000 cost can be very expensive for certain individuals. The good thing is that if we scale these solutions, they not only strengthen the resilience and climate smart levels of the individual household, but also of the city as a whole, because these homes are able to run off-grid, they're able to conserve water, they're able to run extremely low energy that can be generated by solar panels on the roof. And all of those things contribute to the wider resilience of a city, particularly in the context of the energy challenges the world is facing today. The second example I'm going to give you relates to the message: when pursuing system change, we must not let perfect be the enemy of good. And that's going to be illustrated through a story of another of our partners, this time in Mozambique, a partner called Casa Real, who have been developing some of the most affordable homes across Africa, let alone in Mozambique, with a $10,000 starting price for those homes, which relates to a 100-meter squared plot, which is designed to be incrementally expanded as a household grows. Now, in 2019, Cyclone Idai hit Mozambique on the coast where Beira is located, and there was a huge amount of destruction. What the Casa Real houses were able to demonstrate is that actually you can build a home at a relatively low cost and it can survive these kind of climate risks that we face today. But at the same time, the homes have demonstrated that in order to get to a point where we have climate smart solutions that are able to happen at scale, you have to go through a number of steps and address a complete range of system barriers. So whilst these homes have been developed to be the second most affordable house in Africa, they did not start with the climate smart solution, but they're now undertaking their third phase, targeting edge advance, which means minimum of 40% in energy efficiency. And in doing so, they've had to unlock a whole range of system barriers. So they've first had to demonstrate that you can build homes for this viable price point. They've then needed to demonstrate that there are end users that are interested and willing to purchase those homes. They've then had to connect with the banks, and they've pioneered mortgage products that are substantially more affordable than the base rate in the country, in a country that only has 600 mortgages in total. And through doing so, they've then linked that to a lease to buy scheme, which means that 100% of residents have made payments on time through rent to buy, which starts to unlock that mortgage market and change perceptions on the credit reliability of the low-income segment. And as a result of all of that, they are able to focus on how they make these homes even more climate smart. And they're working with some cryptocurrency funders to actually accelerate that process and support mortgage provision. So really, the message here is that it's similar to one of the messages we heard earlier, that actually you have to take incremental steps with some of these things. And the transition to net zero resilience is one that we need to do patiently, but also quickly. So we're really proud with what Casa Real have achieved over the 5 or so years that we've been working with them, and really excited to see what they're going to be able to do next. My last message is around the concepts of zero carbon and resilient homes not being mutually exclusive. That means that we do not have to treat them as two separate things that we action. We've seen so commonly that where global climate spend has been required to address both mitigation and resilience, that it skews towards mitigation. It is much easier to fund a yielding solar plant than it is to fund resilience measures, where the paybacks are sometimes harder to determine. But we know from the work of our partners that every climate smart, affordable home we built is fundamentally strengthening the resilience of the ultimate beneficiaries of those homes, particularly when you're taking into account the resilience risks that will be faced in the future through items like the Building Resilience Index. So this is another of our partners called Billion Bricks, who are currently pursuing projects in the Philippines and India. This is a pilot project in India itself. And the model for this housing is one that very innovatively combines solar utility scale and also affordable housing, but in the inverse way to normal, where they've started with the solar and then they're developing the housing. And as a result of doing so, they have these enormous solar roofs that ultimately reduce the cost of the home by about 20% through the energy savings. They're then saving about 6 tons of CO2 a year through that clean energy generated, which is around 10 kilowatts of solar generation capacity. And in doing so, they are pioneering a model where for about a 15-hectare site, they're able to generate 10 megawatts of solar generation capacity while simultaneously building 1,000 net zero resilient homes. And in this sense, the net zero element of this is fairly straightforward to understand through the clean energy, but the resilience, as with the other examples I've shown today, is being strengthened just at the same time, because these homes are generating energy near to manufacturing plants, to urban centres, and therefore able to provide job provision, to provide reliable clean energy, to provide integrated water in areas where these sorts of solutions haven't existed before. And again, this translates to city level, because when you have these kind of solutions coming through, you start to look at how you develop a city differently, and you start to address some of those challenges, as we've seen with the BGC, where we need to find innovative ways of linking affordable housing in the right locations with solutions to the other challenges that stakeholders and cities face as a whole. So those are kind of my 3 key messages today. Building climate smart does not have to be complicated nor expensive. When pursuing system change, we must not let perfect be the enemy of good, and that the concepts of zero carbon and resilience homes are not mutually exclusive. I hope that this has helped inspire some solutions in the Philippines, where we're also active, and would welcome further conversations with anybody who would like to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Great examples. I'm glad to see Billion Bricks there, because that was one of the startups that was supported by Shell back 5 years ago, and now they're scaling up. So glad to see it there. And wonderful examples also, Tom. And I think there's some questions in the Q&A chat box for you. Okay, thanks. Great. I would like to call on our next presenter now, and then I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in this webinar and let Bill take over. But our next presenter is Ian Simpson, and he is the and Ian has been the director of Broadway Mainland since 2006, and has been actively working in Asia for the past 20 years. Ian has been instrumental in establishing Broadway Mainland as a major player in Southeast Asia. He has helped setting up he has helped in setting up the studios in Singapore, Shanghai, Abu Dhabi, Mumbai, and Jakarta. Prior to this, Ian was based in Broadway Mainland's London studio since 1997. Ian has worked across sectors and regions with expertise in community focused urban regeneration projects. His experience ranges from small to extra large scale schemes. Ian advocates the relationship on how a development can improve the well being of the city, town, community, and individual. He has particular interest in residential and mixed-use sustainable community design, and he was responsible for leading several high-profile and award-winning projects across the world, including Century City in the Philippines, Promenade 57 in Indonesia, and the Miami Cruise Liner Terminal RCCL, Battersea Reach, UK, and Singapore's National Heart Center
That's enough.
and the
That's enough. Stop. 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 Let's get on
okay,
and do the presentation. I'll tell you what. There's been
okay, Ian.
thanks everybody before. You know, Manny, Tom, Raymond, Angelo. There were some great presentations, and I thought we've got the scheme we're working on at the moment. So this is kind of a real life work in progress. I think Manny's stage one. We're at here. Developing the pilot affordable housing scheme. We're doing this with the UK Foreign Office, Commonwealth Development Office, and we're working with BCDA, Mott McDonald's, and working together with UN Habitat. So lots of great people have worked on this scheme, and I'm going to crack on and show the scheme. Really, got lots of slides, and I think I'm just going to pick out maybe lessons learned, takeaways for other people who are developing schemes. And let's go on to the next slide. I'm going to try and keep this moving. There's actually there's two sites we've looked at, Broadway Mallia. I'm going to focus on the pilot affordable housing scheme. Now, this is something I've personally worked on, but I wanted to pick out, we're looking at the Central Park within New Clark City as well. And I picked up on Manny's comment about the importance of water retention. And actually, when you think about a master plan, you have to be very focused on the big picture. And I think one of the key mistakes which I've made and we've all made is actually we look at the red line and what's inside the red line. And actually, a good sustainable master plan needs to focus on what's outside of the red line. More important, and water resilience is really important. Does the site flood? What's the benefits in terms of fauna and flora of the scheme we're going to do? It's quite important that this scheme is a new master plan. It's part of a new master plan. And one of the key things we've looked at is how it affects the existing community. Again, it's very easy to focus on the new. But when people live next to and work next to a scheme, you need to consider those as well. So next slide. This shows the site, and you can see some of the photos of the existing community. The pilot housing is on the edge of New Clark City. So it's more important than ever to think about how you connect and connectivity. And you shouldn't see that as a negative, because connection adds value and it's good. So one of the things I come across a little bit is let's put a fence around the site. Actually, that's the last thing you want to do. You want to connect, make it safe through good design, and it helps the community, the one you build and the one around it. Next slide. I picked up on Manny, his comment about mixed use, and this is something you should always consider, even if it isn't the dominant use. And what we've got here is a residential site, but we really actually what often makes a good scheme work and sustainable is the other stuff. And we've got 10% of non-residential, and that actually makes a good. So I don't need to get on a bus. I can walk to a shop. I've got somewhere to work. That 10% really makes the life of the place. The other thing is what we've worked very hard on this scheme is what are the space, what is between buildings to make it safe, connected, and also about public buildings to make a community. Something I'm been aware of as a visitor. Sometimes as a visitor, you see things in a different perspective. Is how community is really strong in the Philippines. how religion's an important part of life. So within our housing scheme, we wanted to have community buildings, we wanted to have a church, want to make sure there's some shops, somewhere to go to school. So all of these bits, in addition to the affordable housing. Let's go on, next slide. A list. I'm not going to go through all of these points. I think Manny talked about 5 earlier. We've got some key guiding, and I think if you're going to do a master plan or a scheme, it's quite important to write down what are the drivers, because they're slightly different for each scheme. This being affordable housing, top of the list, affordability. And that was picked out in a couple of the comments about sustainable development. Affordable housing. It sounds like, obvious, but ticket price is important. People have to purchase it. So, how you build it, size of unit is really important. And I won't go through all the other points, but a good benchmark if you're planning a scheme is to look at the UN Sustainability Development Goals. I'm not saying you should pick them, all of them, but it's a good benchmark in saying these are some of the good drivers for our scheme. Next slide. And this is our site. We've got 35 hectares, which is quite a good sized site. And the diagrams just show some of our thinking and some of our kind of early priorities. And I'm just going to kind of bullet point going through them. One of the key aspects for us is preserving the good environment we've got. We've got a small river through our site. We've got existing trees. So we look after those because they add value to our site. We look at existing transportation and future planned. Really important. How I'm going to get off the bus, walk with my shopping to my house in a safe way. So that ease of access, safe access, and what's going to be built around, where are the schools going to be? So all of these sort of things are kind of key bullet point questions to ask early on. Next slide. And I mentioned the park earlier. We're looking at 2 sites, but they're connected through a green network. And this is quite important in the overall master plan of New Clark City, is those green connections and strengthen it, because it is part of the thinking about flooding, but it's also thinking about protecting the environment, and it's also thinking about people, how they live. So we've made that a riverside park in terms of healthy environment, and I've got somewhere to run, exercise, take the kids for a walk, and those sort of activities. And you see some of the diagrams below. The 2 circles looks about walkability, thinking about, and actually within this scheme, we looked at the distances, which were what we felt was a good distance to walk, and it started to evolve with 2 centres rather than 1. In most schemes, you say, let's put 1 centre in. But here we felt we didn't want people to get in a car, so it evolved into 2 centres. Other slides quickly show that we wanted to create a mix of, not only, I mentioned mix of use, in terms of residential, you need mixes of typologies. So one type doesn't fit all. So we've got different types of apartments, different sizes, and actually landed houses. And there's often a question, we get into that discussion, landed houses sell, let's cover the ground with landed houses and make them, sustainable, but it's not really if you're land hungry. One of the challenges of big cities these days is the kind of the urban sprawl goes out further and further. But at the same time, back to that term affordability, I want to make sure that I can deliver things that people want to buy as well. So next slide. So what I'm saying is we create a mix. This is one of our diagrams which looks at types of spaces, clusters of development. So it's feasible. And when a cluster is good, it creates a neighborhood. Because 30 hectares is a bit big, so you want to be able to have a community within a zone where I know my neighbour. And so we split it into clusters. It becomes deliverable for the potential developers. And with this, we're looking at partnership of private and helping to fund affordable housing at the lowest level and be able to sell. So it's kind of a mix of different typologies within the developer. Next slide. And this is where the master plan is at the moment. What we've got on the main roads is slightly larger apartment buildings, and that's kind of down into a hierarchy. and you look at your master plan, usually the bigger intersections, you'd have the bigger buildings. And within that, behind there, we have smaller housing. Smaller housing also drops down to the local community. So small tying into the existing housing. And you can start to see on this, we've got two key public spaces, one where the community square and the other River Park with the church. So we've really focused on creating really, I think Manny said earlier, a nice place to live. And what you want to, and although this is kind of an urban location, we want to have something which is a great place to live, which I feel is somewhere, like, you know, my kids want to be brought up, where I want to work, where I want to live, all those things we're aspiring to. And I love Tom's comment, and I think it was Angela as well, about keeping things simple. So actually, in a good master plan, you know, it doesn't need complex buildings. So, you know, you keep the actual framework simple, keep the just think about connecting roads, connecting circulation, creates a safe environment. Next slide. And so this is looking at the massing. We have a variety of massing from fairly small scale to bigger scale. And in terms of the master planning, one good thing is to make it flexible. So it has changeability, so the market can change. So with that, we can actually increase the density. If the demand for apartments increases, we can change the mix. So that's one thing we've always tried to do, is create what we call a flexible master plan, and the framework stays consistent. So that's on a road framework, but the idea of having high quality green spaces, you know, those green lungs protecting the environment, and to create the amenity and add value of life to the people who live there, who will live there. Next slide. We've designed a kind of what we call a kind of simple kit of parts, where we believe, you know, back into simple product, but creating a good community. You know, eyes on the street, so the windows look out. So it creates simple surveillance. Think about natural ventilation. So simple things which put the buildings in the right orientation, allow, you know, if I've got an apartment building, I want to get wind through there. So I don't need, so my cooking could be ventilated, my bathroom could be ventilated, I can get daylight on both sides. And that's kind of kit of parts we've developed. And it's efficient as well. That we're trying to avoid those kind of long, dark corridors, create daylight and create community at the heart of it. Next slide. And it's hierarchy of spaces. So even a small pocket park can create great amenity for a group of housing. We look at how we can create different typologies of housing apartments together, and apartments on their own, and then hierarchy of space and looking circulation around the edge, and spaces where I can have a small play area, or I can just sit under a tree with my neighbour outside my apartment. Next slide. And this is something, it's all, we've worked together on this, is trying to make it contextual of the place. We saw some schemes in Africa earlier. Here is trying to make it feel of contextual of the Philippines, of Clark, without getting, I think, too over the top in the stylistic. But with that, we'd analyse the heritage. The heritage is not just in, you know, what is a building look like, it's how it's used. So that's why we're keen to have a community building, the church, places to meet. We looked at the idea of colour. Colour is very strong in the Philippines. Sometimes say too much, but with that we bring in that, and the rhythm, proportion we see locally, and we've generated something which we feel it doesn't feel alien to Clark in what goes in there, and architecture. But keeping the architecture back to simple, because it needs to be affordable. The spaces make the place. Next slide. And so this is working the kit of parts, small core courtyards, naturally ventilated apartments, places which people look onto, but also getting down to really understanding the module, so it can be built in a cost-effective way. We've also looked at flexible, because everybody's different. So thinking about small units which can be used by, you know, singles, couples, small families, growing families, and how that develops as an apartment as well, which is important. People from the residential sector often talk about affordability and efficiency. I like the word flexibility. because that creates a lot of options for somebody to buy and stay there rather than have to move. Next slide. I think I'm just, this shows some of our sustainable criteria. I'm not going to talk about the detail of the individual building because this is a master plan, but just show some of the slides of the images now. I know I'm running over time, so just click through some of the images of, key outdoor space, community buildings at the heart. We've brought in the market, so it's a place you shop, support the local farmers in the area, so got businesses. I can buy my food there. Somebody talked about the supermarket earlier, but we want not only supermarket, we want fresh food market, community building with, simple buildings, but this could be potentially a sales centre, but then it could be long-term community building and a sheltered place to meet where events can happen. Wayfinding, I try to avoid signs. If you've got good wayfinding, landscape, it really helps in creating safe and logical and simple straight lines. Outdoor living, good places to exercise, good for families, good places to meet, overlooked rather than pushing them to the edge. These are the value type of places we want to create. And sports and activities. We've integrated some farm lot units. So again, different types of units to create a really rich environment. And keep going. And this is the central square. And I just I won't talk through the central, maybe another time we'll present the central park, because I know we push for time, but we are looking at Central Park. And one of the key things, I was talking about, when you think about a master plan, you need to think about the big picture. These two sites are connected through rivers. And one of the things I think which was mentioned earlier is thinking about water management. And one of the key things for our Central Park, it acts as being able to contain the water in flood conditions. And so we've designed a park which allows a huge amount of water capacity for New Clark City. So if we click through again, because I know we'll push for time, might be able to show, again, key drivers. So when you design a master plan, think about, what are the words you want to do, which then you can judge it rather than I just want a nice place. What are the things we need to do to make this really work well as a scheme? And so I think one of the, I picked on some of the earlier presentations in terms of activity and uses and outdoor space. We're really pushing this park hard so it can work in many different ways, different times of year. Just click through the slides just to show, so it works it's adding value in terms of sustainability, in terms of water retention, to protect flooding for the community, but being a real heart of the community. This will be one of the biggest parks in the Philippines. And so we don't just want a bit of green, we want it full of activity. I mentioned shaded spaces earlier. And so we want to be able to use this park in different ways, different people, for different types of day. It's going to have everything in there. And so it's really going to become a, sustainable park, but really good, sustainable community park as well. And one of the benefits, talk about cost earlier, parks really uplift cost and value to a community around there. So if you've got a residential building or an office building, it will add value. This is proved all over the world. So providing high quality spaces for people to gather, exercises, actually it pays for itself, because you've got the offices and apartments have a significant uplift to being next to spaces like this. I'm just going to click through the slides. So I think I've overrun my time. But so we've got two very interesting schemes being developed in New Clark City. I'm really happy to have any questions on that. Thank you so much today.
Thank you, Ian.
No problem.
Yep, thanks for the presentation. Now, Ian, I'm a locator in Clark, so I look forward to seeing the completion. And I must tell you, I have been to parts of that area, not the Central Park, but the river portion.
Yeah.
And of course near the the athletic stadiums and the swimming pool sites. So it's a beautiful area. We look forward to
Absolutely.
it, and I like how you think of a lot of things, including small farm lots, which not too many people actually think about. So something we're looking forward to, and we watch it closely because this is a golden opportunity. It's one of the rare opportunities, maybe the only one in the Philippines now, after BGC, where you get to build from scratch. And so this is going to be really great, and we're going to love to see progress over time. So
Yeah,
thanks for that, Ian.
thank you.
Now let me move to our last speaker, Kathy Saldana. So Kathy is the principal and CEO of PDP Architects, a team of architects and engineers based in Makati City. She's also a trustee on the board of the Urban Land Institute, or ULI Philippines, and co-leads Women Leadership Institute in Real Estate. She's known for hospitality design, retail mixed use, residential and corporate high rises, and a very, very wide range in her practice. Kathy has also been a previous speaker in one of our Livable Cities labs, and one of the really good presentations we've seen on green buildings and open spaces and all these things that we've been talking about. So we decided we'd like to have Kathy back again to talk about sustainability, technology, and green innovation in housing. So let's please welcome Kathy Saldana. Kathy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bill. I am very happy to be here again. And as I told you earlier, I was able to connect with some mayors last time, and moving forward with our design and sustainability vocabulary, it's great to be able to reach out to so many from all over the country. So this afternoon, I'm going to make this really quick and sharp and precise. So it's all about sustainability, technology, and green innovations in housing. So sustainability. When we look at the whole concept of circular design thinking, we focus on wellness and health for people, for materiality, methodology, sustainability, and technology, mostly for materials, and the way buildings and houses are built. And then we look at the preservation, adaptation, the heritage, the culture, the sense of place, and the character of places. And we are also looking now at areas beyond cities. And as we create more mixed-use communities all over the country, we are coming up with various combinations now, looking whether it's the retail or the residential or the hospitality, or say an anchor service locator, that would be the main feature. And then afterwards, put together that site-specific character and be able to create a new mixed-use community outside. So we're very fortunate as well, having spoken about Clark earlier, Ian, we're working on the Subic-Clark Railway planning right now. And because of that, we're working through the 71 kilometers of communities that have to be approached in that area spanning Pampanga to Bataan and Zambales. So very interesting how we could also help the country by putting forth our sustainability vocabulary. And on the next slide, we are coming up with this whole concept that everything on sustainability and going green is now mandatory. It used to be a feature, it used to be a buzzword, but now everybody has to go edge. Everyone must go verde. Sure, LEED is still there, but we are finding that edge and verde are the two most important ways by which not only do we document our buildings for sustainability, but actually ensure that all of these features are ever present and are there, not just for documentation or for certification for marketing, but for the people. And in doing so, we have that great relationship between the man and the planet, understanding all the IRRs and regulatory laws that take place and are important whenever we build and we design. And we have educated so many people now about SDG 17 and how it applies just as well to architects and master planners and builders all over the country. Moving forward, we take into consideration the World Green Building Council, the Green Building Framework. It's all about healing the earth. We are going to get past this already. And in 2022, where our main part of the conversation is not anymore, you are on mute, but we are on hybrid. And that from here on, we're going to get closer to completely healing. And that by 2023, hopefully, we are all out there in the open, embracing technology, digital transformation, and all these adaptations and pivots by which we were able to quickly learn towards healing the earth and expanding our resources for renewable energy. The SDG 17, which I would like to put on a t-shirt for all of us to wear. Everybody knows this already, especially in this Livable Cities Challenge community. I call it the LCC community. And technology. Technology is so important for us with all our various design topologies. Understanding earlier all the speakers who spoke before me about how important the human space bubble is and how different our widths, our definitions of our own personal space is depending on the culture. And so we put that into practice now with elevator configurations, with our ceiling heights, with the need to expand and to breathe. Breathing fresh air is the new luxury. And having a lot of open spaces with excellent views is part of that extravagance that we now need in this new way of planning and design. We look at our practice and understand that we mix AI with BIM derivations, which is building information modeling. We study data analytics now for every barangay, for every small community, and put forth ways by which they could expand and how developers could come into the picture into an otherwise tertiary town and find out using virtual reality, how could developers also visualize the existence of their profitable real estate development in an area where there are mangroves or small fishing and coastal communities in an area where you still need to protect forests. And all of that, all put together in how we now plan using various technological means. And then we look forward now to how the rest of the years will come for the Philippines. It's very exciting that we are approaching, yes, the new Clark City and finding that there's so many interesting government projects that will come forth out of this, and there will be more townships to come. And there are now new urban centers. And in doing so and seeing all of that, we just have to be so mindful that, say you are doing a new township in Bulacan or in Ilocos or parts of Taal, Batangas, you have to preserve. And yet, when you are working in Coron in Palawan or somewhere else in Bohol, you need to be mindful of the coastal development. So create new centers for people, for work, for play, and for living, and be able to understand how connectivity will also take place. Because now that connectivity is a need that is a post-COVID standard. From now on, everybody will demand to be online in all the communities and the niches that we are all creating. And wherever we are finding that health centers and facilities are so important. There used to be this whole concept of that massive medical center. Now we need to create them in much the same way that you are creating retail into pocket cities, so that everybody has access to retail, to education, to medical care, all the basic needs. And also, because we are a country that is gifted with all our pretty islands, there is that need to spread out hospitality and remote escapes and ecotourism, not just luxury. And I'm so happy to see Tao Philippines back in their great steps now in Palawan, doing so well. My clients, Shangri-La, very busy now. We are expanding as well with Marriott and a couple of other hotels elsewhere around the country. So the game is now starting. And I'm very glad that a lot of planners and developers were very busy during the lockdown to start the sketches and the studies. So for all our mayors out there in the different provinces, get ready. The progress is on its way to you. And we look at as well at more upscale residential, as well as more affordable housing coming into fore. And we are seeing more cold storage and food and distribution logistics companies coming into play, so that that great seafood that used to just be distributed to Japan from General Santos or parts of Mindanao can actually be shared already with other parts of the Philippines. So we need to reconfigure our ideas on public spaces, have more open spaces and parks, create more satellite liturgical and civic spaces, as well as be able to build more areas by which people could grow and people could experience parks and public life. So there will be new design topologies as well for residential towers. And currently we're working on a 7-tower affordable housing in, wow, of all places, Caloocan City. So it's a very, very dense area within the metropolis, but there is a huge demand for proper quality design, affordable housing. We are getting there, and we are finding as well more airports and other transport terminals, like what I mentioned earlier about the Subic-Clark Railway that we are currently working on. We are also studying, we're doing some feasibility studies for DPWH and looking at how bridges and interconnectivity will reach some of our remote islands in a very good and properly designed way. So moving forward, we have more hubs and spaces for industrial and warehousing, food production, food storage, delivery depots, and these have to be in your cities and provinces very soon. You have to have those developments. And we are approaching our work now with more smart design with various platforms, particularly now looking at virtual reality and AI in designing. Next. Our technology now is all about risk mitigation, not just in the design process, but in the end output, which would be the buildings and houses that we put together. And on the next slide, we are looking at various green innovations. So when we do these green innovations, we are seeing that most importantly, we have Verde here, but yes, I have been converted to be such a big fan of Edge. And so we are looking at several developments of ours now with our clients that will shift to Edge as well. But thank you to all the LEED and BREEAM who put it all into place, because now we're able to tailor fit our needs here in the Philippines towards what is good. As a Verde certified professional and associates of ours who are Edge certified, we are finding that these two, even together with WELL, fit so closely to what we need here in the country. And the green building framework is so important, from management to use of land and ecology to energy efficiency and conservation to, next slide, water efficiency and conservation, waste management, and the use of green materials and how they are put together, documented, applied, and constructed. We look as well at transportation and the strategies by which people can get to work, to play, to education, understanding the value of indoor environmental quality and emissions, and looking forward at some of the electives that help make that building or that development or that community an excellent model within society. So looking at employment and economic opportunities, equality, education, skills development, our communities must provide that community engagement and benefit, and not just to earn points, but truly to be focusing more on people towards health and safety. And this is our goal for the future in everything that we do. And we are so cognizant of the people we work with, most especially our mayors and all the leaders in the various communities. It's all about people, health and wellness, that work-life balance, the future that we are creating for our children, as well as the efficiency and the effectivity of our buildings and communities towards creating a better future. Thank you so much. Stay in touch. I will answer questions even outside of this webinar if you reach out to me. Thank you so much. Now that was quick, see?
Thanks so much, Kathy. And I really love your vision and your concept of really looking at that human space bubble, whether it is in a high density community like Caloocan, or whether it's spread out to the provinces. And we've always felt the Philippines needed kind of this combination of high density as well as opportunity for people to spread out. And of course, connectivity is going to become so important in this hybrid age. And I'm convinced we're going to be hybrid, not fully virtual, but not fully face to face. But I think we get the best of both worlds, and we're going to need connectivity for that. So thanks so much, Kathy. Now, if I may invite all our participants back on screen for a Q&A, and I apologize to the audience. We're going a little bit over time, but there are good questions. So I'd like to invite Manny Blas, Angelo Tan, Raymond Aguilar, Tom Woodward, Ian Simpson, Kathy Saldana to join us. And I'd like to also invite Aldrin Sampson, Chief Operating Officer of Imperial Homes, to join us as well on the panel. And let me actually throw the first question to Aldrin Sampson from Imperial Homes, since you are the case study in the combination Edge BRI example of Angelo. What motivated you to pursue certification with Edge and BRI, and more importantly, what were the benefits to the homeowners, to the home buyers that you are in Edge and using BRI?
Yeah, thanks for the interesting question. We've been working with IFC for many years now through Imperial Homes Corporation. And the first thing that we wanted to do is to integrate sustainable and resilient technologies into affordable housing market. That's the focus of our strategy for the Philippines. First, we integrated solar solutions. It allows our home buyers to save significantly on electricity costs. Recently, we got data from our home buyers saving them, like they're only paying 5 pesos or 7 pesos per month because of the 1.2 kilowatt peak solar solutions with battery that we install in every housing. And then in 2017, after we successfully launched the solar-powered communities, we integrated or incorporated a green building technology from Denmark called Conovate. This provides superior resiliency as the technology provides 20 times the strength of concrete hollow blocks. It's also molds-free, which prevents the growth of bacteria and viruses, which is really relevant now during the pandemic when we're trying to avoid spread of the virus of the COVID. So when we applied these houses to Edge, we were actually upgraded from Edge Standard to Edge Advanced, knowing that we save more than 40% on electricity. It's actually 71%, while on other parameters like water and materials, we save more than 60%. And we use these certifications to financial institutions so our home buyers can avail of lower interest rate. For example, from National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, they're offering as low as 3% of interest rate. Compare that with banks and let's say Pag-ibig, which offers around 7%. So they are saving a lot, not only on electricity, on repairs and maintenance, but as well on the amortization payments that they have to pay for, let's say, 25 to 30 years.
Okay, wow, great, Aldrin. So there's obviously a clear benefit to your homeowners by getting the certification and building to those particular standards. So thanks for that, Aldrin. Now I'll go quickly through some questions and maybe keep the answers short so we can cover as many questions as possible. Let me call on Kathy first, because you work with a lot of LGUs. How can we encourage LGUs to start adopting sustainable or green practices? And where can you get resources to start educating community stakeholders about sustainable or livable cities? How do you reach out to them?
I think you guys are doing an excellent job already, and you are one of the channels by which they are learning. It's also important for us to actually go out there and speak with them. And we have been invited many times to go to some of these mayors. And I believe that your platform will be one wonderful way. We're also doing it at the ULI, the Urban Land Institute, and EROF, the Eastern Organization of Regional Planning and Housing Human Settlements. So we're reaching out to them together with you. Let's all work together because a lot of our LGUs are really just out there. Also, they want to learn.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. Angelo, a question for you. Does EDGE cover the green building requirements of LGUs? Because we've seen varying LGU regulations and ordinances.
Yes, yes. So the answer to that is yes, because we actually developed the Philippine Green Building Code along with the DPWH. So what developers and the public sector will find is that a lot of the sustainability measures between the green building ordinances and the Philippine Green Building Code and EDGE are actually similar. So it's just a matter of using EDGE to really validate whether those are implemented and also to quantify those results.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Angelo. I have a question here for Ray Aguilar from Globe. Where are you in terms of rolling out or introducing IoT devices or solutions, for people, for subscribers, so they can use to make their own homes smarter? I mean, you've got a great example in Globe Tower. Now, let's say people want to apply that to their home in terms of building controls. How do they do that?
Yeah, we're always on the lookout for the latest technologies and what devices, and we do this via our Globe at Home brand. You would see that our Globe at Home products actually promote and look at simple IoT devices such as smart plugs, or how you can the example that I gave that we implemented in TGT, the Yuhu air quality sensor. It's actually, you don't have to buy that same brand, but there are other devices in the market that actually have such solutions. I think it's really just a matter of how we are also committed to making sure that we can have connectivity accessible to our customers. And I believe that's really the push now of Globe, to making sure our digital lifestyle can be further enhanced. But yes, it's to our Globe at Home brand. There are some options on how you can get in touch with these devices or get access to these devices.
And a follow-up question, Ray. Let's say I get those devices. Can I control them all from my phone, my smartphone, my iPad?
Well, there are actually a lot of solutions. I mean, you can, if you're an iOS user, you can use the Apple Home Kit. If you're a Google user, you can use the Google Home app. There are a lot. Even those devices have their own dashboards and interfaces. But so yeah, it can be a tablet, a smartphone. It can be a dedicated computer, a laptop that can actually control these devices.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Tom. I was so impressed with the buildings that you are constructing. I mean, at the prices you mentioned, I could almost sense the audience looking at them and saying, "Holy cow! These really look great." Great examples. You had them in Pakistan, in Mozambique, in the Philippines, in India. So the buildings are built. So how are they? How are they financed? How do the buyers, how's the ecosystem work so that a buyer can actually buy one of these units?
Thanks, Galero.
Financing extended?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's one of the big challenges we face in every market that we work in, and why we work in partnership with individual developers. So there's conventional mortgages in some of the more mature markets that we work in that are linked to the homes, whereas in other markets we might establish something like a rent-to-buy scheme, so that we can demonstrate creditworthiness over several years. And we actually have partners that aren't even building developers who actually work in AI and informal sector credit scoring to help shift the housing finance market towards the more informal sector, which is where the majority of our kind of end users exist. And so across those factors, we focus primarily on the capital financing for the projects and proving the concept of the projects themselves, but then link into those solutions to actually demonstrate and build the markets for finance for any of the homes that we work in.
So a follow-up question then, Tom, for the Philippines, you mentioned Billion Bricks. Is the role of Billion Bricks just to build it for you, and then you look for a different partner in terms of the selling and the financing? Is that how you guys work?
So in the example of Billion Bricks, we we work with Billion Bricks at the moment to demonstrate a proof of concept. And so they've demonstrated that the homes are viable. We now want to bring those to a scale where they can receive larger investment. But we then establish partner ecosystems. Obviously, I mentioned that Billion Bricks work across multiple geographies. But so we link with, we're interested in people that own land, people that are happy to provide capital financing, and of course, Billion Bricks partner with energy users and energy purchasers for the projects that they use. So they are developing an end-to-end service model, but there are areas of that where they have strength already. For example, in the delivery of the homes, and then there are areas where they're actively looking to expand because they think that in 2030 this will be the model for affordable housing.
Yeah, great, thanks. For Ian, there's a question here for you about how did you manage the affordability of the units for the houses? What were the price point ranges? Because I guess you had different typologies.
I'm not going to go into the detail because we're working out with BCDA at the moment, but I can talk broadly on the principle that we have a variety of price points, and we're looking at a method where the land has a value, and we're looking for a private partnership to come in to take the land for their development, and that will help fund some of the socialized housing. So I think Tom mentioned about not being perfect, but I think it is a good community when you have private, affordable, and socialized, rather than saying let's put all the socialized over here and all the private over here. So we're looking at kind of a 10-year blind, which is a challenge for the Philippines because usually it hasn't been done very much, but in Europe, 10-year blind is more common, where you've got a mixed group of affordability within a development. So basically what I'm saying is the private helps fund the socialised. And there isn't a huge percentage of socialised, just say, e.g. affordable 30, private, and 15, for example, of socialised. But it's better to get that built and be part of the community in a great environment than not build it, or build the problem which we found in the UK. Traditionally, you'd build all the social housing together, and eventually it would cause long-term problems. That I'm brought up, I live in a socialised housing rather than live in a community. And so one of the things we're trying to do is create that kind of cross-fertilized community, which gives long-term opportunities to people in terms of sustainable community. So, which is quite new to the Philippines. Traditionally, you'd have private sector, affordable, and socialized would be separate. And so what we're trying to do is embrace that socialized to create a rich community.
Sure, great, thanks. Let me go to Dinky von Einsedal, who's also, I think, involved a little bit in this project. Dinky, would you like to add to that? Can we get Dinky von Einsedal on? While we're waiting for Dinky, Ian, I have a follow-up question. Sure. Dinky, I see Dinky on. Okay, Dinky, please go ahead. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Well, Ian and I are both working on the same project in the New Clark City, and I just wanted to add that we did a market sounding for the affordable housing project. So we did establish the affordability levels that we are anticipating would be required, taking the typology of the workers that are expected to work in the New Clark City. And then we consulted with a number of real estate developers who are active in the area, just to get a feel of the market that they're catering to and the kind of products that they're offering. And it was on that basis where Ian and his associates crafted the design of the units. But we have been also been discussing with Pag-ibig. But one of the things that I had recommended for consideration by BCDA is the adoption of the system known as community land trust, which is a system that's done in the UK, in the US, and Australia, which discounts the value of land to ensure that the housing units are more affordable. In other words, we do not, because the problem in the Philippines is that whenever a housing unit is transferred to another owner, the land value, the value of the whole package goes up. But it's mainly because of the land.
Yes.
Because the housing unit itself depreciates over time, but the value of the land always appreciates. So if we remove the land from that equation, then we're able to bring down the price of the of the housing unit to a more affordable level. And so it's similar to what we had used in the Bliss housing program before, where we used the usufruct system. And now the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development are now using the rental housing approach. So it has kind of similarities to that. Now, what we are concerned about is that in the Philippines, the preference of families is for ownership, not for rental, not for long-term leases. So it's a challenge that needs to be overcome.
Yep. No, thanks for bringing it up, Dinky. So I had a question, in fact, for Ian and now Dinky for you. Is that this thing that people like ownership versus long-term lease versus rental, and but Clark has a unique situation where it's basically for leasehold. I think I'm not sure that you can buy property on Clark. So Ian, in the concept, of the affordable housing, are they going to be mostly rental units as opposed to
we're looking at long-term lease.
Okay.
It is a discussion, so it is something which is ongoing, because there is a perception that people like freehold, they like to own the land. But I think that does change. I mean, I'm sitting in Singapore today. That has changed in Singapore over the last decade. The people now accept leasehold in a way they didn't 10 years ago, and it's more and more acceptable. I think if we're designing a quality product and the leasehold is of a sufficient length, I think it's acceptable. But that discussion is ongoing, and I completely get where you're coming from.
Yeah. No, it's a discussion that's always in our minds. And as I said, we're located there, so we look at these things. Manny, let me go to you. I have a question. I know you've answered it in the Q&A box, but there's a question about inclusivity. One of the, maybe if you want to call it one of the raps against BGC, is that it doesn't really have affordable housing for the people, some of the people who may be working within BGC itself. And is that something you're addressing? And as you build out the new development where the old FTI complex was, is that something you're going to address in that new space?
Well, first of all, I agree with that observation, and we don't deny it. The land values in BGC have rose astronomically over the past decade, and low-cost housing really has been edged out of the developments. What we have tried to do is cater to the needs of office workers who have to commute an hour or two each way back and forth BGC to some people living in Bulacan or Quezon City by providing them what we call the flats, which are micro dorms that you can rent 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time. You are forced to a room, and then it becomes a lot more affordable for those people working in BGC. But yes, the observation is correct. And there are no plans to go further down than medium cost housing, which, for Ayala Land, that would be the Avida brands. Anything lower than that would not be explored at this moment.
So even in the new property, Manny, at where the old FTI was, that option will not be looked at?
No, I think the residential projects there would, again, be up to the Avida level. Again, because of land prices that have increased significantly over the past 5 years at least. So what? So no, there's not, those areas are not being explored right now.
Sure. No, I mean, we understand, because I mean, there's always this balancing act, I guess, that we have with these developments. We're really going over time, but so let me just stop with one last question. I'm going to address it to Aldrin Sampson at Imperial Homes. Aldrin, what were the challenges that you faced for green and resilient construction for your segment, the affordable housing segment? What challenges did you face?
For solar, for example, we had to explain the benefits and the value of solar to financing institutions. For example, for Pag-ibig, other developers, they're taking it very complicated to understand, let's say, terms like kilowatt hours, maybe inverters converting DC to AC electricity. So we had to go the right process of allowing these stakeholders to understand the value of solar when it comes to as a long-term solution. In terms of building technology that we got from Denmark, it's a little bit expensive, but when you look at the benefits in terms of let's say repairs and maintenance, you don't have to rebuild your house for another 30 years because that technology allows the house to last for 100 years. There's a certification that validates that this material can last for 100 years. So there are a lot of savings, and we have to do the computation, the mathematical value to show these financing institutions and developers that there's really value that you have to incorporate in the computation of the cost that you consider. So it's really important. I also encourage other developers to really get into the EDGE app of the International Finance Corporation and the Building Resilience Index, because you can use the certifications to validate all your claims when it comes to carbon emission reduction and in terms of like savings on water and materials.
Thanks a lot, Aldrin. Sorry, I just one last question popped into my head quickly for Tom, which is, if I heard you correctly, my understanding was, are the houses that you're building prefabricate, from prefabricated panels, or what's the construction technology used for the houses that allows you to bring the cost down?
Sure. There's different solutions for different markets. The first project that we showed in Pakistan is prefabricated composite panels, so highly insulative, very thin, mixed to a steel frame. And then some of our other projects literally are range from precast concrete panels through to compressed earth bricks, and some of our projects across Africa in particular. So we even have an innovator in cross-laminated timber in Kenya. So there's a real blend, and we actually, the capital cost of the construction is one of the ones that we have ability to vary, but we support any solution that fundamentally has a net zero pathway and an affordable pathway.
Great, thank you. Look, it's been a really, really interesting session. We've gone over time. We could, ask for a lot more questions. The Q&A box is full, so please look at it and maybe take the opportunity to answer some questions. But I want to thank all the speakers, because this has been a really fascinating set of presentations. I think people, I feel personally a little more optimistic now about the future of planning and development and urban planning and city planning, listening to all of you. And I think there are a lot of opportunities out there, and great, I guess, a great chance for us to improve and develop more livable cities and municipalities across the country. So thank you to all our speakers, Manny Blas from Ayala, Angelo Tan from IFC, Tom Woodward from Real, Ian Simpson from Broadway Malian, Ray Aguilar from Globe, Kathy Saldana,
Thank you very much.
from BDP and ULI. Thank you, Aldrin, for joining us, and Dinky for joining us on the on the panel. I hope I haven't missed anybody, but it's been a really great discussion. I see a lot of questions from the participants saying, can they get the copy of the presentations? The answer is yes, because we normally post these presentations on the Livable City website. They're also asking if for the evaluation form, when you hit the exit button, you automatically get the evaluation form. And if you're on Facebook, look for the QR code and you will also get the evaluation form on the QR code. We're going to switch gears for our next lab, March 23rd. That's going to be back to public health and the Mandanas, the effect of the Mandanas law and on LGU delivery of public health. A completely different topic from today, but equally important. But once again, thanks to all the presenters, very, very interesting set of presentations. And I think, the audience size and the number of questions and comments indicate that people really appreciate your time and your insights and your lessons for all of us. So once again, thanks to everybody. And we hope to be in touch. And I hope a lot of people contact you directly for more questions, because this is really the intention, as Kathy had said. This is the platform by which we like to introduce mayors and cities and businesses to the different professionals and the firms, because we think this is the best way to improve and create livable cities in the country. So thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks a lot, huh?